How's life, Jessica?
Oh, life is wonderful. Life is wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Last time I saw you, I was actually delivering you juices at the World Series outside the area just before you get ready to blast a tournament too. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. This amazing green juice got me ready.
Multi-talented man, see? Jessica, we're going to go right back to the beginning, okay? So all heroes' journeys start at the beginning, backstory, right? So that's where we're going to go. And I've got a pile of cards here called Family. And I'm going to ask you a random card. If I ever ask you something too personal, just let me know and we can skip it. That's cool. All right?
No problem.
But they're all going to be personal.
Okay, great.
How have you let your parents down?
Oof. I have to be honest. I don't think I have let my parents down. I was a pretty good kid. I mean, a little bit in high school. I went partying a little bit. I can tell you a funny story. In high school, I snuck out, as we do. And so I said I was staying at night at my girlfriend's house, and instead I was going to a party at my boyfriend's. And just so happened my boyfriend rented the house from my parents. So yeah, around 1 a.m, my mom shows up in her moo-moo and, in front of all my high school friends. I mean, I was 17 and when she was spanking me in front of all my high school friends. So that's probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And so, yeah, that's probably the only time I've ever let my parents down, sneaking out to go see a boy. But no, in my full life, no, I graduated high school early, to go into the military, and I've been on my own since then. So I'm pretty sure I haven't let them down anyway.
Where did you grow up? Did you have any siblings or anything like that?
I grew up in very rural Indiana. I have 3 siblings. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. And my oldest brother was also in the military, so it's kind of how forced path for me to join.
I've been kind of addicted to war documentaries lately. I watched World War II in color on Netflix, and then that led me to the Vietnam War, which I'm watching at the moment. And the first question that springs to mind when I watch something like that is, what on earth possesses people to join the military? Like, it terrifies me. And we had Martin Jacobson on earlier, who joined the Swedish Navy kind of like by mistake. You deliberately did it. Why did you do it? Were you terrified about joining? What was happening?
Well, I deliberately joined, but it was all just kind of circumstances that led me to that. So I was in high school. I thought I was going to get a scholarship for softball. It was always a dream of mine to be a softball player. And I was a pitcher. And my sophomore year of high school, I threw my shoulder out of socket. And that ended my softball career. And so my brother, like I said, he's older than I am. He's 10 years older than me. And growing up in such a small area, there's not a lot of opportunity. And so I saw that my brother had gotten out and was able to see the world. And I really wanted that life as well. But I couldn't afford to go to college or anything. And so I knew that if you join the military, they pay for your education. And this is pre 9/11, you have to remember. So I originally joined the Guard, which is supposed to be 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So I was no hero when I joined. It wasn't like, oh, let me go defend America. I was like, let me go get my education paid for. And so I joined in April of 2001 as an intelligence analyst. And could have chosen a different career field. Maybe would have been in the war. But
what does an intelligence analyst do?
You have to excuse me. It's very hot here in Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's okay.
So an intelligence analyst. So there's two different. You have 2 different kind of job descriptions. When you're in the States, you're doing one type, and when you're overseas, you're doing another. As an analyst, let's say I'm just throwing a number up there, 15 different types of intel. So you have electronics intelligence, signals intelligence, linguist, then you have an analyst. So everyone collects all their information, all the different types of intel, collect all their information, and then they send it to me, and I go through all of it. Because let's say someone takes a picture in Iraq, right? Or they get an email here, they know about this person over there. Well, they don't know how they're connected. So they would send that information to me, and I would go through all of it, and I would do like pattern recognition and see how kind of all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. So my day-to-day operations in America were mostly just researching other countries, terrorist groups in those countries. We're kind of assigned your own country and your area of expertise. And then overseas, my day-to-day operations were to brief the aircrew before they would fly into threat locations and kind of brief them and tell them what terrorists cells are going to be looking for, what weapons to look out for, and kind of, just the information about that airfield specifically. And then when they would get back, I would debrief them, find out what they saw, and stuff like that. And then also, when you go to brief a pilot, one of the first questions he asks you, I'm like, oh, you're flying into, let's just say Baghdad today. You're flying into Baghdad today. Like, okay. And then this is what you look out for, and yada, yada. And he says, well, how many times have you been there? And if you answer 0, he just turns off his ears and tunes you right out. So back then, Intel was actually considered a non-flying position, but I had to fly over there because no one would respect your opinion, and it's reasonable. You're telling them it's their life on the line, right? Mm-hmm. You're telling them, look out for this within this mountain and everything. So so I would fly into most of the airfields so that I'd have a little bit more credibility, when I'm briefing the aircrew.
Is that something that you volunteered to do? You realized that, hang on a minute, if I'm going to be good at my job here and get the respect, I need to kind of do this.
Well, I wouldn't say I volunteered. I wouldn't say I volunteered to do it. The only thing I did volunteer for, I guess I honestly didn't even think about it at the time. It's years later when I reflect back on my career in the military. When we got called up, our unit was called up in like March of 2003. I got activated, which means I got put on active duty orders. So it was going to become like my full-time job. But I didn't get deployed. So my unit got activated. Like my brother got deployed. A lot of my friends got deployed. But I didn't get deployed. I got activated, and then I was kept right in Louisville at my Air Force base. One of the my senior sergeants, he is having a kid, and so he was over there for like the first maybe 2 months, and I ended up volunteering to take his place so that he wouldn't miss the birth of his child. And so that's how I actually ended up going to the desert. I probably would have had to go anyway, but yeah, I ended up volunteering to go because I just thought, he needs to be there. I was like the only person left that could do it. So, yeah.
When you're volunteering to dump yourself in the middle of a war zone, I mean, what's going through your mind thinking about it?
Well, honestly, I was only 20 years old. I mean, what was going through my mind? Not as much as would be going through my mind right now. That's the honest answer. I didn't have as much fear, right? So you're young, you're dumb to a certain extent, you're naive. And I really felt like it was just, I don't know, I really felt like that was my calling, that was what I was supposed to do. And I didn't think about it too much. I thought, my brother was over there, so I knew that it would be nice for both of us to have each other there. And I don't know, I felt like it was the right thing to do. So that's why I did it, to be honest. That's the best thing I could think of.
And how did that impact your parents, having 2 of their kids in the war?
It was devastating. It was devastating, especially for my mom. She took it a lot harder than my dad did. My dad's always been a little bit less emotional, more reserved, a little more hands off. My mom was a very hands-on mom, always there for everything, whether it be all of my surgeries that I've had to have, which I'll get into that later on. But she's just always been there. She's always been like my rock. And so my brother, like I said, he left in March of 2003. And then I got called up in May, and that's when I was going to get deployed. And my mom was just so beside herself that she couldn't take me to the airport to leave. My aunt actually had to take me. It was just too difficult for her because it was her oldest and her youngest. And so, it was really difficult. But she made it through. She's had a lot of adversity in her life, and so this is just one more thing for stress for her. But I guess when you have kids, it's to be expected. But having 2 kids in war, probably not what she ever thought would be happening.
My sister's going through a similar thing because her eldest he's just turned 17 and he wants to go in the army, and she doesn't want him to go, and she won't sign his papers, and he's getting very angry about it. I mean, so yeah, it must be a really tough spot, huh?
It is. I mean, when people ask me now, so I have a lot of nieces and nephews that are coming of age, military age, and so a lot of them ask me, "Oh, would you go in again? Like, they want to pay for their college?" And I tell them that if they don't want to go into the military, if they don't want to go into the military to be in the military, if they're only going to go to college, I would not go into the military. It taught me a lot, gave me a lot of discipline, but I was already fairly disciplined before I went in. I ended up graduating high school early. I mean, I was on a good path already. If someone really does need the discipline and they can't do it on their own, then of course I would recommend something to that effect. But it changes you in ways that you'll never get back. It makes you grow up, and you lose a lot of your adolescence and a lot of your childhood. I had friends that got to go to college and then go to college parties and have a great time, but I had a top secret clearance when I was in college. I didn't get to go to any parties. I didn't get to do anything that all of my kids my age were doing, you know? And so it kind of takes a lot of your life away, and you can't get that back. You know, once you're, 18 to 24, those are some really formative years. And when you're spent them in the military, it makes you grow up really too fast, in my opinion. So I think it's great for certain people who actually, want to be in the military or they need the discipline. I would say, go ahead, do it. But if you're only doing it to go to college, I'd say definitely don't do it.
Well, how much of it was how much of it was the compatriot element of it? Because like when I was watching the Vietnam War, there's a story there of this young lad, and he was just like, I need to go to Vietnam and fight for my country. Like it was a sense of nationalism and compatriotism that I just couldn't relate to. Like the only time I ever feel like that is like when I'm watching England play football. Like it's like I have no other sense of national pride otherwise. How did that play a part?
I do have a lot of like patriotism. I do have a lot of pride in that in that aspect for sure. But for me, like I said, at that time, I was only 20 years old, right? So I was very naive. I grew up between Indiana and Kentucky. Not a lot of people don't talk a lot of politics. I mean, it's just like you're Republican or you're Democrat, but there's not a lot to speak about it. Not a lot to talk about it. I love America. I always will. I've been to a lot of countries, and I know that obviously the U.S. has its problems, but so do a lot of other countries as well. So I'll always stand by her, but I wouldn't say that I was super, gung ho, like, oh, I have to defend America. It was more, like I told you, I felt like, I felt more the gentleman that was in my unit. I want to go because I think he should be home for the birth of his kid, and I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, I did sign up for it, And so when your number gets called, you have to show up, and you do.
So for people listening, what areas did you serve, and did you ever have any dicey moments at all while over there?
So I can't disclose all of the areas that I served in because there's still, not allowed to talk about it. But the main ones that you hear about, so Iraq, Afghanistan, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Pakistan, Kuwait. I'll just name those off for a few, but there was several other countries that I've been in. I never had, and I'll never want to take anything away from anyone because, see, from my perspective, I wasn't on the front line with a gun knocking down doors. Those are the real heroes, in my opinion. Those are the guys that are out there, and the men and women that are out there on foot patrols. I mean, there's just no way I could do that. There's no way I would actually, I know myself too well. I mean, I couldn't do it. It's way too stressful, but I had a lot of friends who did. And so to me, those are the real heroes. And it's funny when I speak to people who aren't or haven't been in the military or don't really know anyone who has, been, when they speak to me, they're like, oh, wow, it's a kid, amazing that you did the war and you were so tough and, in the front lines. I'm like, no, I said I was in those places, but I wasn't knocking down doors. So for me, I don't think of it as any big deal. I'm like, yeah, serving the war is not a big deal because I don't want to take anything away from people who actually served, in my opinion, And so did I have any dicey situations? I had one really scary situation because we were in a airfield that had just been taken over by us. And so we fly the big cargo planes, right? The big C-130s that, and they're really slow moving and they're huge targets. And we had landed and no problem. We had offloaded some supplies and everything. And so we were taking off. And so you can't be on the ground that long because we're not like the Army. We're not flying these, Chinook helicopters that are small or take off really fast. We have to be on, in and out really fast, so really quickly. And we were taking off, and all of a sudden you hear like boom, 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 and everyone. I mean, we fly C-130s. We don't have any defense mechanisms. We don't have guns. It's not a gunship. Yeah. We have chaff and flare. That's the only defense we have. We get shot at with a missile. We have, chaff and flare to hopefully bite off on it, but we don't have any guns to actually defend ourselves. And so everyone kind of hit the floor, and we thought oh, this is. I mean, that was the most scared I'd ever been in my entire life, by far. I didn't know what had happened, and it turned out that we had blown our tires had blown because there was it's called FOD, the stuff that's on the air, the runway. In America, and all of our bases, we do FOD walks. We walk the runway to make sure there's nothing on it so that doesn't happen. And one of the loadmasters on our plane, he'd been flying for 15 years and never had it happen. That's how rare it is. Rare. So that's why no one knew what it was. But then, so that part was scary enough because we all thought like, this is it, So then we had to stay there because our aircraft no longer worked. And that was probably the most surreal, kind of crazy, is I felt like it was in a movie. I mean, I really felt like I was on a set in Hollywood because we had to, vacate the aircraft. And we went into the airfield, and it was an airport. And inside the airport, like it was crazy. Like the chairs, like you walk in, just to picture yourself walking into like a really small airport though. Okay. It's a small airport. You're walking to a small airport, and like you go to sit down like in a chair, that are all like connected, all like the plastic chairs that are connected. And they just are completely like bullet holes through all of them. And then there's just like concrete rubble from the ceiling being blown apart. And I'm just like walking through that, and it's all about timing. So if you're in theater, if you're in any of these countries and you're there during wartime, of course, like you're at risk all the time, whether you're in the air or on the ground, you're always at risk. And 2 weeks after we left this airfield, it was attacked, and a lot of people, were really injured. So it just, honestly, is just really about, timing and everything. So I made it out in one piece, and I'm really, really fortunate for that. Mentally, I think, I've done all right. Since then, there's a lot of things that I think back upon, but I'm really fortunate, and others really weren't and aren't and have like, PTSD. People say that, pretty lightly, whatever, but it's a real thing. I mean, yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah, after watching that the Vietnam documentary, I'm in like episode 3 at the moment. Each episode is like 2 hours long. There's like 10 or 11 of them. It's mind blowing, and I just want to say, Jessica, like I live in America 6 months of the year, so thank you very much for doing what you did, because without people like you in all aspects of the military, someone's got to do it. It's crazy. I mean, back then they had to draft and stuff like that, but you learn about the class system and how the working class just had to go and be drafted first and foremost. And it's terrifying.
That's the other thing too. Well, first, you're welcome. I appreciate you saying that. And it is I just got in a discussion about this a few weeks ago. The whole, like, should people say thank you for your service, or if they think it's kind of, that, I don't know, they're like insulting you by saying it or whatever. And for me, like I said, I almost feel uncomfortable when people tell me thank you for my service, because I don't feel like I did much, like, I'm saying I wasn't on the front line, but yeah, I served in the war, but so what? Does that make sense? And for people who aren't in the military, they're like, no, it's crazy, you were over there. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to take anything away from the people who were really, like Vietnam kind of people. And, but I mean, I do appreciate it, of course. And that's the other thing too. And what I've noticed, especially in my career now, like in poker and everything, you were talking about the class system. I know very wealthy people now, that I didn't know growing up, because growing up, there was a lot of farmers and, just normal blue collar workers. And what I've noticed is that you can go down the line several different generations, and you won't find anyone in their family on either side that's ever even served in the military, or knows anyone who served in the military. And that's kind of when I started to realize that that's why I don't really so much agree with people joining the military, because they want to have an education. Because there's a lot of things, like I said, you don't get back, those formative years that you don't get back, and you can lose your life, and you're laying down your life for for the US. But I don't think it should be a class system. I almost think it should be like in Israel, where everyone serves 2 years. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are or how poor you are or whatever, because that gives you respect to the country. And I do believe in that, because people with money, they should be able to get out of going into the military because they have money. No, they want to live in America, just the same as everyone else. They should have to serve their country. That's just my opinion. But that's just what I've seen over the years, and it's really difficult. Like when I speak to my friends, they're like, they can't relate at all, because they never even had to think about, paying for their education or getting, having to go into the military none of them. They don't even know what that would be like to even think about it. And so that kind of, it irks me a little bit, I'm happy for them that they don't have to do that, but I think it also would give a lot more respect to people, and give respect to the US, because you'll hear a lot like, oh, I'm leaving, the US is getting so bad, I'm going to move. And I'm like, perfect, move, pack your shit and get out. Like, but then they don't, because the US, comparatively to a lot of other countries, is still amazing, And so I think if people had more like a closer relationship to people who had to be in the military, or that one of their kids had to go into the military because everyone has to serve 2 years, I think their opinion would change,
It's interesting how you say that your experience overseas in some of these areas that you would never, ever envisage ever living there. And then how can you complain about living in America? It reminds me of poker. It's like, it reminds me of people complaining about poker. And then you think to yourself, holy shit, if you really had a job where 9 to 5, you had to get up and go, and you was a plumber or electrician or worked on the railway or construction or something, holy shit, you would never believe how lucky you are right now.
That's the other thing too. It's just no perspective, no perspective, no real world experience. That's what's really difficult for me, and it's gotten increasingly more difficult over the years in poker. The relatability and the conversations I have to hear from these crybaby little bitches, to be honest with you. So many of them, like, and I'm just saying, like, man, you have never faced any adversity, zero adversity. You were born, you had money, you played poker, you've never had to work, you didn't have to go to college even, you had to do zero. And all you do is sit by and complain. Well, there are people who have to get up and really work to pay their electric bill and really work to put food on the table, you know? And so, and I've seen that, and don't get me wrong, like, I didn't grow up with a lot of means, but I grew up, we had plenty, you know, we had a roof over our head, we had food, we had, you know, we had good experiences in that way, but I never take it for granted. And so constantly around poker players all the time, hearing them whine and cry about mundane details that don't matter at all because they've had legitimately zero life experience, you know? And zero adversity. So
I totally get it. And while you're on it, I've got a pile of cards here. Money. I'm going to ask you a question on money while we're talking about it. You ready?
Here we go. Yeah.
I won't ask you that one. You won't answer it anyway. When you lie about the money you earn, why do you lie?
When I lie about money, okay, well, it's probably a twofold answer. I lie to certain people because I don't want to make them feel badly about themselves, you know? So people will say, like, oh, how much money have you won? And they've worked really hard their whole lives, right? Or they make hardly any, they make bare minimum, maybe minimum wage. And I just don't want to make them, I don't know. I just don't want to make them feel bad. Not that they would, but that's more like on me than it is on them. That's just my own feelings of whenever I used to make minimum wage and I knew how much other people made, it would make me feel bad. So they may not feel bad, but it makes me feel bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's definitely a reason that I withhold how much I make. And then another reason I would lie about how much I've won or how much I make is just for protection. Because we're all targets. And I think if people know you make a certain amount of money, they can try to do a number of things, take advantage, extort, use it to their advantage, use it for something, for their gain. And so I try to just keep kind of my big numbers as close to the best as possible. Obviously, people have the internet, they Google, they can see how much I've won in tournaments, but they don't know anything other than that. That's
your Jason Bourne in you. I like it. You're in a room and you know all the outs. Like, I can't talk about my money. They'll kidnap me.
Well, I mean, it's, you're kind of laughing, but like there's countries that I've gone to by myself that have a really high rate of, kidnappers, especially a female American.
A blonde female American.
Yeah.
That South America just suddenly springs to mind.
Spring into it, yeah.
You're spot on. You're right. Have you ever been in a situation where you've wanted to lie about your money because you felt you didn't earn enough, given that you're in the poker industry and there's so many kind of people and hierarchies within poker where they have a lot of money? Have you ever felt like that?
Never. Never. But I don't operate from ego. And I think that if someone were to lie about how much money they've made, I think that's operating more from ego. Also, maybe they have low self-esteem about their own skills in poker, Could I have made more money in poker? Sure. I'm very happy with how I've done thus far. I definitely am, But no, it's kind of funny that you say that. I think we both know that in poker, someone could say they have 20 million in earnings, could say on Hendon Mob, they have 20 million in earnings. We also know that they could be down 10 million, right? Because of the buy-ins and they have leaks and then they lost it in cash or gambling or other ways. So I'm very happy with my number. It says I've made around 1 million in tournaments and I feel good about it, because I know what the real number is and I haven't had a real job in 12 years. So I think that the numbers, that the years don't lie, and people who've made a lot of money, their variance is much higher, and you may not see those people anymore, because they swung for the fences and they missed.
Yesterday, I interviewed Phil Helmer for this show, and as you can imagine, for 90 minutes, we spoke about his ego. Has there ever been you just said there that you don't operate from ego. Has there been a time where it's creeped over your shoulder a little bit and you've had to look at it? That's one question I want to ask. And the other question is, where did you get this from that you don't operate from ego?
Well, I definitely, to answer your first question, has it creeped in before? It definitely has. Oh yeah. Many times. I am not perfect by any means. I mean, it could creep in again tomorrow. I catch myself sometimes because when I'm having conversations with people, I catch myself like, okay, is this from ego or is this just the facts, right? So I try not to be boastful about how much money I've made or the lifestyle that I have, but also it's like, well, I have made this much money and this is the lifestyle that I have. So there's definitely a fine line that you have to toe. The ego part, I'll tell you the story so that people can understand how bad my ego could have gotten. I made a bet some years ago, and some people watching this will remember, but this is years ago. I'm talking 2010. I made a bet with a guy about eating chocolate bars, and it was a big bet. It was for $6,000, and I really thought I could do it. But to be fair, I wasn't given all the information. I was lied to about from people in his circle who I didn't know that were actually in his circle and on his side. Whatever, I ended up losing the bet. So I lost $6,000 about not eating enough. I couldn't eat enough chocolate bars. That was definitely from ego, because today, if someone wanted to bet me that, I would say I would never bet that. I don't gamble at all. And it was a really good lesson for me because even though my military background, I still try to be really I trust people pretty much implicitly until they show me their true colors. Because that was one of the main reasons I got out of what I used to do. Every single time I would meet someone, the first thing I would do is just kind of go top to bottom and size them up. And that's not how I want to live my life anymore. Right. And so from there, I just try to trust everyone. I've been burned a few times in poker, and we'll probably get into that later on down the road. But yeah, so that was probably the biggest ego for sure, because I just came off my first big score, which was in Australia in 2010. And then when I got to Vegas in 2010, right after that, that was when this bet happened, and that was for sure how that came about. I would never do it again. I don't need to. I don't need to prove anything, and I don't like gambling at all. I mean, I really only play poker. I don't have any leaks in gambling. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy any aspect of any game that I don't have an edge in.
So as a young girl growing up in Indiana, was you somebody where your ego was a problem, and then over years you've helped to curb it and control it? Well, I guess the correct word is to be more aware of it. Or was you someone who grew up minus an ego, and then it showed up somewhere along the lines?
I would definitely say minus an ego. I didn't even know what ego was growing up. Everyone was really down to earth where I grew up. We grew up in farmland. We still to this day don't have a stoplight in my town. It's in 20 years when we've gotten maybe 2 new businesses in that area. So you don't need it. You don't need an ego there. Everyone, if your word is your bond, and if your word doesn't mean anything, then you have nothing there. And so in high school and throughout school, I had lots of friends from all different, in different classes, and because I enjoy being friendly. That's actually something that's always been my case. I like being nice to people. It makes me feel good. So why not, And I didn't even have ego when I was playing sports, and I was fairly decent at a lot of different sports. And I would say almost like how I was in the Air Force. They call it an analyst, a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I was in sports, except for softball and volleyball were my 2 main ones that I was a little bit better at. But no, I was just kind of decent at them. And so the ego thing probably started happening. I wouldn't even say ego so much, but I can just recall that chocolate bet and maybe one other instance where I just really was it's just made myself sick to my stomach, just that I would even operate in that manner,
Awareness is really important though, isn't it? Because I, as I was on a call just before this one where I was talking to a load of coaches that work with me to help people quit alcohol. And I said to them, I'm finishing this. I'm finishing up now because I have to go and interview Jessica Dawley. And 2 of my coaches I love poker, and they will know who you are. And then I'm like, what did I just say that for? but I didn't consciously do it. But obviously, I'm bragging, right? I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm this is my job, right?
But it's
and then
also, but it is your job though.
yeah, but I also know that there's a part of it that is like when I live my life as an open book, but I'm really aware that there's a little part of that is ego led as well as also helping people to try to achieve their dreams. There's also a little bit of ego there, and that for me, what I've learned interviewing people like you is it comes from low self-esteem. As I look through at you and other people I interview, the vast majority of them are like, no, I don't have these issues that you have, because I don't have low self-esteem. Do you ever have a time in your life where you suffered from esteem issues?
Oh, I still have low self-esteem, definitely. And I was thinking about this actually as I was walking over here to do this interview with you. I was thinking about it because I've dated many guys throughout my life, but two of them stood out because I was thinking at some point when we were dating, we were arguing about, I don't know, something, and both of them were addicts. And one of them still is an addict, but one of them's in 6 years recovery now. So, but one of them, we were having an argument, and it was about his issues that he was having with his addiction. And out of nowhere, he's like, "Oh, well, if you were actually really good at poker, you would be playing a lot higher stakes than you're playing now, you know?" And I was just thought to myself, like, it really hurt my feelings. But also, I was like, man, the reason at the time I was like, the reason I was playing these low stakes is because I had a lot of health problems and I couldn't afford to play higher because I couldn't afford to lose, whatever. And I couldn't afford the stress and everything. And I thought to myself, like, I know that that's the truth. Like, that's why. But also I was like, man, maybe he's right. Maybe, and it just like, and so my self-esteem from that kind of stuff is like, it's very low. And it's crazy that you let someone else, set that for you. But it's just someone that you trust and that you love, and then them saying that, and I'm like, well, but now I know it's not true. I know that was just there's stuff that they had to work through. But yeah, I mean, I still struggle with self-esteem issues for sure. I do. I'm constantly reading now and studying and learning and growing, because as humans we're continually a work in progress, right? And constantly growing that way. And even like now I'm down in Costa Rica, and that's kind of what I'm doing here for 2 months. I'm working on myself, getting healthier mentally and physically. So I still definitely struggle with self-esteem issues, because everyone could tell me, like, everyone in the world could line up and say, you're amazing, you've accomplished so much, you've gone to college and in the military and the poker. And I'm like, yes, but I still haven't done this, and I still haven't done this, and I didn't do that, and I did this wrong, and I should have done, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I am, not healed. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I think maybe we all it's like a spectrum on a sliding scale, with like really super low self-esteem down here somewhere, like super high, and we're probably all on it somewhere, and it just shows up, more consistently for some people than others, like whether they're doing the work, whether what their awareness is about life and stuff. So yeah, reassuring that you said that. So when you're in the forces, what are you thinking about in terms of what you're going to do with your life? Are you thinking to yourself, oh wow, I can't wait to get out of the forces? Or are you thinking to yourself, oh, I won't mind a career in the military? What's your plan moving forward into the future?
So in the beginning, they give you, so my brother was like really good with this kind of stuff because he knew kind of what to expect. And so in the beginning, he says, hey, they give you a test, the ASVAB, and depending on how you do on that test, they're going to give you a sheet of paper, and on that sheet of paper, it's going to have jobs that you're allowed to, pick from that you want to go into. And that's if you go into the Guard. If you go active duty, it's a little bit different. And so I'd never really been, I was always a terrible test taker. Actually, because I second guessed myself a lot, and I have my entire life. I'm talking about as far back as third grade I can remember. And finally, when I got into like fifth grade, my teachers would not allow me to change my answer, because more often than not, I'd put the right answer and then I would change it and do it wrong. And so I was a really terrible test taker, always. And when he told me about this test, I was like, oh man, it's not going to be good, because when I could speak to someone and I can talk to them and they can understand that I'm good in these areas, but taking a test so you don't fill in a little circle, multiple choice is terrible. And so, but the ASVAB is great because it tests you in such a broad spectrum, like mechanical and English and math. It's not just like the SATs or the ACTs. And so when I got the test back, I scored. I see this is like the ego thing. I did okay enough to be able to kind of choose whatever job I wanted up into a certain level. And so my brother, he had started out as a crew chief and then went to a flight engineer and then became a pilot. So it's a nice progression, you know, so crew chief, flight engineer, pilot. And those all take a long time. So it's easy to kind of, not easy, but you could do those in a 20-year career. But when I chose Intel as my job, I didn't start at kind of back. I started at kind of near the top. And so at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Like, oh, I went into Intel. Well, to go from Intel, I signed up, you know, for 6 years, there's no really upward mobility. It's you go to Intel and then I could have become I joined as an enlisted. Once I got my degree, I could have become an officer and stayed in Intel. But I felt like I'd done everything I wanted to do, you know, in Intel. And I was like, okay, what's the next choice? And it's like, well, you could become a pilot. I had no desire to fly. My brother said, if you don't love flying, if you really don't want to be a pilot, he said, there's just absolutely don't do it. And I was like, well, I have no desire to be a pilot, so yeah. I don't want to do that. And so the other progression is Intel FBI. And so back then, this was in 2001, they said it costs around $1 million to get a top secret clearance because they interview everyone, right? Your school teachers, your neighbors from when you were a baby, your friends, everyone, because they want to make sure that you are who you are and that you don't have drug issues or, just a million different things. And so it takes a lot of time. It takes like 6 months to a year to get that, for them to go, FBI goes and interviews everybody and everything. And so you're really like highly sought after in the civilian world and also in other government jobs because it's $1 million right at the top, And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to school for criminal justice. I'm going to go into the FBI. And my brother was really smart in telling me that to take as many of my classes for the career that I want as my general electives. That way I'm not switching like my career, halfway through my college and like have to start over again. And so I took criminal justice and I had signed up for 2 classes. And so I'm, all day long researching terrorists and weapon systems in the military. And then at night, I was going to night school and I was researching rape and murder cases because my professor was the coroner. And by the time I was 21, I was like, that old saying, like, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been more true because there are so many things that I know that I don't want to know. So many things I've seen that I wish I'd never had seen, and you can't unsee them, you can't unknow them, and I can't get them out of my head. And I knew that eventually maybe one day I might want to have a family, and I just didn't want that life for me or for them. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to pivot, and this isn't for me. And so that was kind of how the path kind of leaned towards poker, not because I thought poker is going to be it for me and that's going to be my career. I just needed something less stressful, the war, all of that. I needed a break. And so that's really my love for poker and social interaction and kind of being a little bit more relaxed and being around other, just other people. And I really wanted that. And so when I made that, I made the shift to play poker full time, I didn't think I was going to be doing it for this long. I thought I was going to do it for a few years just to kind of decompress a little bit and then jump back into doing going into the corporate world. Because I ended up getting a degree in marketing and a degree in management. And so I thought those are always useful. I can use those in the civilian world. But, years passed and then I got sponsorship deals. And so the money was good enough with those that I didn't need to work. I could still, play poker and just have those. And then, I just kind of stayed with it. I just enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the lifestyle that it gave me a lot more than I actually enjoyed the playing aspect of it. In the beginning, it was great because it gave me that competitive outlet, not being able to play sports, poker was amazing for that. You'll find that a lot of ex-athletes, a lot of athletes who've got injuries, they play poker because they need that competitive outlet. Physically, they can't take on anymore. And so I had some medical problems as well. And so poker just really afforded me that opportunity. And like I said, I didn't think I'd be in it as long as I have been, and we can get into that next. But I figured maybe like 5 years was going to be, 5 years and I was out.
I'm gonna ask you a little bit about the beginnings of your poker, but before I do that, I want to go back to the exposure that you've had in the military, and then you choose in the evening to, research rape cases and murder cases, and it reminds me of my mum. So every time I go around my mum's house, right, which is not very often because she lives in the UK and I'm over here in LA, but when I go and see her, she'll be sat in front of the telly at 10 o'clock at night, and she's watching all these rape serial killer documentaries. And she's like, I'm like, you're all right watching this, Mum? You're on your own. Like, yeah, she's like, yeah, it don't bother me. But there are some people that believe, my wife's one of them, I want to steer clear of that energy. Like when I'm watching the Vietnam War, I'll say, Liza, you've got to watch this. And she's like, no, I'm not watching. I'm going to watch something funny because I believe that the energy transference that will give me is going to be bad for me. Whereas I look to my aura ring, and when I'm watching something like that, I get really calm. I don't know if I'm like a sadist or something. I get really calm. Whereas Liza, like energy-wise, she freaks out. Like, where are you on the energy scale, and how energy interacts and the whole spiritualism? Where do you land on that?
So obviously I've met your wife before, and I believe your wife is an empath.
Yeah.
And so that's, for empaths, it's really good for them to avoid any kind of negative energy, especially negative energy that they don't need to take on. Because what happens is for empaths, they bring on that energy and then they have to try to get rid of that energy. And that in and of itself is it's really can be detrimental to them, And so I totally understand. I'm very much the same way. My friends know that the two types of movies that I watch the most are comedies and romantic comedies. I don't need all of that other stuff. I've seen it firsthand, where I think it's a lot easier for people who haven't lived it, who haven't seen it. Of course, they can watch more war movies. They can watch, I call them shoot 'em up movies, because my dad loves shoot 'em up movies. And so I don't mind action movies that are a little bit far-fetched, but you're not going to catch me watching a documentary on the war. You're not going to, I don't need it. I already have enough in there, And I'm also kind of an empath. I really absorb other people's energy. And so I'm a firm believer in that. And that's why I knew that going through school and going through the military, that it wasn't for me. My brother and I are very opposite in the fact that he's just like really strong and not empathetic at all. He just brushes stuff off, and he doesn't even, nothing gets to him at all. But that's great for him. But I'm really absorbent. I'm like a sponge. And so when someone is around me, either if I'm seeing it or their negative energy, I can absorb it, and I don't want it, I don't want any extra. So I'm a firm believer in that. You asked me where I am on the spectrum. I definitely believe it exists. I try to, and that's the other thing about, and I'll get back to this with poker. That's why I'm trying to, and I will be removing myself from poker. There's too much negative energy. And I've realized that over the years that as strong as I am and as much positive energy I bring out, it's just a constant battle of good versus evil. I mean, honestly, that's what it boils down to. I'm constantly sitting at the table, listening to people talk about cheating on their wives, talking about how much money they've stolen from people, talking about these horrible business deals they've done, like just over and over and over again. I don't want to be a part of it. I know that it exists in the world, but I know that in poker specifically, there's a huge, there's a huge influx of that, because when you bring in any kind of addiction issues together, gambling, drugs, sex, whatever it may be, you're going to bring in a lot more of that negative energy into that realm. And this is not people I want to surround myself with on a day-to-day, constantly battling it all day long. And so it's something and that's what, when I moved to Vegas originally in 2008, when I packed my stuff up from India and I moved out there, people said to my mom, like, oh, aren't you afraid, Jessica's going to fall into the bad people, whatever. She's like, have you met her before? She's like one of the strongest people ever, And I said, no, of course, like you're not going to have to worry about me. I'm very fortunate that I don't have the addictive gene, the addictive personality. My brother, unfortunately, does have it, and he's now sober, which is great. But like, if it was him, of course, like that'd be a terrible environment for him to be in, And it wasn't a great environment for me to be in, even who I am. It's just, you're a constant inundation all day long of all of that negativity. And it's like, to what extent, to what for, why? For money? I don't care about money like that, Why? For the love of the game? I don't have the love of the game like that anymore, So, and I don't have the ego the few times that I have had it. I don't have that anymore. What I want to do every day is be happy, be around like-minded people who are enjoying life and appreciate the finer things in life. That is breathing, air, family, those things, not money.
Yeah. Man, for people listening to this who don't know, my wife Liza, she runs a massage company called Revive Touch, and we would work on the tour together. I would write and Liza would do massage, and she would come back in the evenings, and whether or not she had a good day wasn't whether she doing a lot of money. It was dependent on who she worked on, because she would really feel it. Like, she would come home and she would feel so bad. On other days, she would feel so good. And it really depends on who she was working on because of their energy. It's like quite incredible. I'm still don't know where I am with it. I'm still like one of these like rational, logical kind of. I don't know like how it goes. But even I've walked into the Rio, like 1 year and been like, oh, hang on a minute, this feels bad.
Yeah.
And I can only take so much. I'll only take so much of it. So. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So how did you get into poker though? So where from being in school to being in the military does poker fit into it?
When I was really young, I used to love going fishing, and my uncle owned a lake. And so my aunt and uncle would have me over, and he would take me fishing like 3 days a week. And then on Thursday nights at his house, they would have like a little regular poker game, him and his buddies and my aunt. And so my aunt and uncle kind of taught me just like penny ante. I mean, just like 5-card draw, 5-card stud. And I just loved it. And so they taught me at like 6 or 7 years old. And then I played a little bit, just like throughout my life. And when I got into high school, my boyfriend at the time, he and I would play every Wednesday at a euchre tournament. We were the youngest couple by like 30 years, at least maybe 40 years. And so we would play a euchre tournament every Wednesday. And then every Thursday, he had a regular poker game. And I was the only female that they would, like his buddies would let play in the game. And then on Sundays, his family would all play. And they'd play all kinds of games: crisscross high-low, Chicago, Pocono, baseball, pass the trash, fours and fours, all the good fun games.
Yeah.
And I really did enjoy playing. I love that social interaction. And so I played a lot in high school. And then when I was, in the military, there was a significant amount of downtime. And so we would play cards a lot. And I remember I went to visit some of my friends that were stationed at Langley in Virginia. And so they had like a regular home game, and they had 2 games, 2 tables going. And so we would play like, quarter, 50 cent, big money. And sometimes you'd have dollars, but mostly quarters, quarters mostly. And so at the end of one of the nights, I had won so much that I had to have help carrying out my Ziploc bags of change. And that's when I knew I'd made it. No. And so, yeah, I just really, I don't know, I just had a knack for the game. And then when I turned 21, I went over and played at the riverboat. There was like the small riverboat in southern Indiana. We used to call it a horseshoe. Now it's the Caesars property. I mean, it was always the Caesars property, but it used to be a horseshoe. Now it's Caesars. And I played 1-2 no limit, and then 2-5 no limit. And once my enlistment and everything was up. So I graduated college in the fall of 2006. My enlistment was up in the spring of 2007. And in 2008 is when I moved to Vegas. And at the time, my parents were really supportive because my mom had kids really young, like very young. She got pregnant when she was 15. And so I had my oldest brother when she, just turned 16. And then my dad, kind of adopted them. And then, they had me and my sister, but they were, by 22, I mean, they had 4 kids, and they didn't have to get to have that life. And so they're both very supportive of me trying to live my dream. And at the time, that was my dream. I know you'd asked before, like, what did I think I was going to do when I was a kid, or what I always wanted to do? I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always had this odd feeling that I was going to be famous for something. And I didn't even know what that meant back then, because you have to understand, like, I grew up on a farm. We had 3 television channels. That was it. And like 2 of them barely came in. I didn't even know what fame was. I didn't have cable. I didn't have like MTV. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just kind of had this weird feeling. And so long ago, I thought maybe it was going to be for sports. Then I thought maybe something I was going to do in the military. And then I found poker, and the little bit of fame that I have from that. And so I feel like that's probably maybe that feeling that I had, but it was a dream of mine, to make it, to try and see if I could do it. And so my parents said, go to Vegas and see if you can, go to Vegas and see if you can make it, because so many people don't get to live their dream, right? They think that they talk about it like, oh, I wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that. And I don't know. I didn't want to, I think having older siblings really kind of helped me out a lot, because I saw their lives. And I thought, my brother got married very young and kind of trickled down. And so I knew what their lives looked like. I knew what my parents' lives looked like. And I thought, I don't mind having their life eventually, but I want to see if I can do this first, And so, yeah, when I moved to Vegas, most people know the story. I had less than $4,000 liquid to my name. And when you play 2-5, you need about $50,000 liquid, right? There was no room for error. And when I moved to Vegas, I got an apartment. I signed a lease they gave me, when I signed the lease, you get 2 months for free. So 2 months up front for free. And then I paid for the third month. So I had 3 months of living expenses paid for. And I packed my car up. No, don't get me wrong. I had like furniture and like nice stuff back in Indiana. But when I drove out there, I didn't know if I was going to make it, out there or not. So I didn't want to bring all my stuff out there first. So when I drove out there, I only had what was in my car. And it was like this old like Buick. And instead of bringing suitcases, I actually laid trash bags in the trunk so I could fit more clothes in there and, more personal items. But I didn't have any furniture. I didn't have a bed. And so the first day I got out there, I went to Goodwill. And luckily, it was Military Appreciation Day. And so you got half off of whatever you bought. So I bought an air mattress for a bed, and I bought a double air mattress, and I used it as a couch. I bought a coffee table, and I remember I bought this like crappy picture to put on the wall because I thought, let me just not have bare white walls. And I spent $15 total, and I got half off. So I spent $7.50 to furnish my apartment. And that's how I lived for the first 8 months that I lived out there. I lived off furniture that I've got from Goodwill. And because I didn't want to have, I didn't have the opportunity to buy furniture, I needed to be able to make it first and build my bankroll. And it was just really, I remember I kept this little notebook and I would write in it, my wins and losses. This is before Poker Journal. This is before any kind of app. And I remember I went out there and I actually played 2-5. And people say, well, why didn't you play 1-3? Well, 1-3 in Vegas, the volatility is much higher than 2-5 because 1-3, everyone has $100 or $50, whatever the small buy-ins are. But 2-5, you get most people at least have some clue of how to play. And I knew I couldn't afford variance. I mean, I had to play super strict ABC as it was. So I played 2-5 and I won like the first 3 sessions. And then a girlfriend of mine was like, oh, please sit and play 1-3 with me. Like it'll be fun, hang out. And I remember like I lost like $130 and I was like, like dying. I was like in the bathroom, like hyperventilating, like, oh shit, And so, and so I was just like, oh yeah, I don't, I need to stick to 2-5. And I did. And that's how I built my bankroll up.
I remember when I first came out of Vegas, I shared a house with John Eames, Matthew Franklin, and loads of other British poker players. And they would teach me in the sauna in the night. And then in the day, I'd go play 1-3 and I'd come home and I'd do my nuts like every day. And they'd be like, what the fuck's the matter with you? Like, why do you keep losing at this stakes? And then one night, one of my mates, Finney, I don't think he plays anymore. He used to play quite high stakes, and he came and played with me, and he was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, this game is insane. It's all over the place. Like, it's no wonder you're losing money, It's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Look, if you're listening to this and it's obvious you're serious about poker, or you really, really, really like Jessica Dawley, either way, you're going to want to improve your game, right? So Rio has your back. Run It Once is the most talked about poker training site in the world. And as a thank you for listening to me hurl my missiles at Jessica Dawley, they're giving you the opportunity to learn from some of the best players in the world with 2 brand spanking new videos released daily, folks, okay? If you sign up today at once.run/hero learn, you will also get access to 3 elite training videos, including one from the Sergeant Major of Poker himself, Mr. Phil Galvin. I thank you. So every hero's journey has an inciting incident where the viewer watching it is like, oh, right, so that's what this story is about, right? So in your case, if we're watching your movie, at this time, it's almost like, oh, wow, the inciting incident is she jumps in a car, she heads off to Vegas, and the movie's all about, is she going to make it or not? Is that about right?
Yes,
okay.
Definitely.
So you're in this car going to Vegas, and you sign a lease stuff. What, are you on your own? I mean, like,
I'm by myself.
You don't know anybody?
I don't know one single soul in Vegas.
That's insane. So right now, you want to be a professional poker player. You want to make this work. You want to earn enough so you don't have to work, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I didn't know one person in Vegas. I had been, right before this had happened, I was actually engaged. Right before I moved to Vegas, I was in a relationship. I had the dream scenario. I had like the brand new sports car. I had the beautiful home. I had the most, like a beautiful, expensive engagement ring. What I didn't have was a good fiance. I had someone who was really possessive and insecure and jealous and mentally, honestly, like looking back on it now, like I know it was like mentally abusive, who constantly was like belittling me. And at one point, like I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror. I had lost like my independence, and I knew that wasn't me. I thought it was amazing because he had 2 kids and I loved them and they loved me and I loved him, but he was like 10 years older than I was. And every day that he would get older, he would become more insecure and more jealous and just this is a really bad situation. And so I thought, like, if not now, when? And so I left that life and started kind of back over with nothing, because we kind of, put all of our stuff together. And so commingled everything. And so I kind of took whatever I could take, and I left kind of in a frantic, like sort of like a middle of the night situation. My family came over and like moved all of my stuff out very quickly, because it was a very, not a great situation that I was in. And so when I moved all my stuff out, I moved all my stuff out October 2nd, 2008. And I had a home at the time. I just sold my house. So I had a house and he had a house, and then we moved in together. And so I just sold my house. September 19th, 2008, I sold my house. And if you remember the huge housing bubble, I was very lucky. So I sold my home, and then like a month later,
then the world went to shit.
Exactly. So it was all meant to be, because if I wouldn't have been able to sell my home, I would have had $0, and so I sold my house and got out of that, and then left him on October 2nd. October 15th, I had knee surgery. And October 29th, I drove to Vegas. And I drove out there by myself. I had my little dog with me in the front seat. He slept. It was 29 hours between to get there. He slept 27 of the 29 hours.
You drove for 29 hours?
Yeah, straight. I slept in a Walmart parking lot for about 4 hours, and then drove the rest of the way.
Wow, you should create a movie on this, Jessica. All right, so let's go back a little bit. So you're in this relationship with this guy who's abusing you, like psychologically,
yeah. Not ever physical. And see, that's the thing. That's what, when you're brought up, at least in my household, like you're brought up like, if a guy ever touches you or whatever, like you leave right away, you don't, whatever. But what they don't tell you, and what I never knew, is like, it's almost like one of those Hallmark movies. It was such a slow chip away at me, right? It was constantly like, you shouldn't wear that. Doesn't look good on you. You should do your hair this way. You know what I mean? And like, looking back on it, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, me now, I would never stand for that for one day, but it was just such a slow, and I loved his kids. They were only 1.5 years and 3 when we got together. I mean, they called me mom, like Mama Jess, like they called me that. Like, I was so immersed in that life, and I thought everything was amazing, but the dark side of it was that everything was not. It was really bad.
Well, it's something that I see often in addiction, when you've got a man who's a lot older than the woman, and then he starts to become really super insecure, especially if the younger woman is good looking, and he then builds his story that she's going to leave him, or she's going to have an affair, or somehow like people are going to mock him and laugh at him because he's older all of a sudden, or you're not going to find him attractive, and this whole thing kind of spirals. What I find interesting is, you're right, like we're taught to put up boundaries, aren't we? So someone has an affair, we leave them. If someone physically hits you, you leave them. But there aren't no boundaries around like how you're treated a lot of the time. And very often we look at our parents and we're like, oh, my job is to stay in this relationship forever, because that's what we're supposed to do when you say your vow. Very few people in my field leave, right? Like I didn't have the courage to leave my wife when I was in a bad relationship. She found the courage to leave me. Talk about that a little bit. Like, how did you find the courage to actually go? Because I can imagine it was tremendously harrowing for you.
Yeah, it was actually probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I mean, it's been how many years now? It's almost 13 years, and I still think about it. It was really difficult for me because he's really highly regarded in the community where we're from. He was a lawyer. He owned a few businesses. He also played poker for fun, whatever. He's very successful. But people that's what they know of him business-wise. They don't know what happens behind closed doors, And people didn't believe me at first, like some of my closest friends. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. My family could see it. And so what would happen was, like, in the beginning, I didn't notice it so much because I'm more of a tomboy anyway. So I don't dress up that often as it was. Like, that's not really me. And so in the beginning, it was like, okay, well, I had my house. He was divorced from his wife. They were separated and all that, but he used to still go over there because they had the two young kids. And so I had just built my house in Indiana. And so I told him it was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Like, I said, you're welcome to stay here. And like I said, he had money. He had a lot of money, so like he could buy his own place. He could do whatever he wanted to do. But I was like, no, of course you can come stay here. No problem. So he moved in with me. And then after I noticed, like after maybe the first few months of that, I noticed like things weren't so great, you know? And so I said, like, you need to get your own place. You need to have some separation of like having your own place and having your kids there and everything. So he got his own apartment and did that with the children. And so I had my house. And so there it was fine because I could come and go and, you know, I had my own space. And then things seemed to be going fine. Like he changed a bit and, you know, he loved me so much and I loved the kids and everything was amazing. And we played poker together. I helped him with his businesses. We traveled everywhere together. I was so happy. You know, I thought like, this is my life now. I'm so excited to have this life. And then he literally said to me, and so a lot of women, a lot of girls when they're younger, they think of like their dream wedding and their ring. And I never thought of that stuff. I was a tomboy. I never even thought about a wedding ring, a dress, nothing, zero. And so one day he comes to me and he said, we need to get a bigger house because the house isn't, in his opinion, isn't big enough for him and the kids, my house. And so I was like, okay, you know, you'll find one or whatever. And he said, no, I want you to pick out whatever dream home you want. You can have, you know, I'll buy it, you can have. And so most women, like most people, right, would just jump on that chance. But I didn't even know, like I'd already had my dream home, this 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that I built. Like that was my dream home.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. And so we went and looked at homes, and I do remember, like I'd always wanted a house that had, I think it's called like a turret, you know, like the little pointy, looks kind of like a castle. It just stuck out in my head. So we drove around Southern Indiana, and I found a home that I really loved, and he loved it as well. So he's like, okay, no problem. And he went out and bought the house. And then I was working at the time. I had done some oil and gas work. In my family, they do that as well. And so I was working on a project in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is back then. And he said, you know, I decided that I didn't want to work out there anymore. And he's like, you don't need to work, you know, come back home, whatever. And so I was driving this 1989 Buick Century. I had inherited from my grandmother. Like I got it when I graduated college from my grandma. So, you know, it's like a beater car, but it was free. So whatever. And I had this house payment and stuff now. So I was just trying to be smart. And so he's like, oh, I don't want you driving that car anymore. Well, let's go to the dealership and buy you a new car, buy us a new car. And so, and like, again, these aren't things like I didn't grow up with these kind of means, you know? So I was like, oh, okay. So we went to Audi. He bought me a brand new Audi A4, whatever, you know, I bought like a Kentucky blue color. I mean, I loved it. It was beautiful. And so, but again, like I was raising his kids. I took them to and from school, like every single day. We drove an hour to take them to and from school. I made their lunch every day. Like they were mine, you know? And all of that was amazing. And so we had the house and we had the car. And then he asked me to marry him in, I think it was August 2007. August 2007. And he said to me, he had like a personal jeweler. And he said, go to the jewelry store. And the guy's name's Dallas. Go see Dallas. And he's going to show you some diamonds. And I said, I don't know anything about diamonds. I don't know at all. And he said, just go and see whichever one you want. And just, you know, pick out whichever one you want. And I was like, okay. And so for the setting, you know, and this is after, you know, whatever. So I was like, okay. So I went to the store and the jeweler, he opens up this little thing and he shows me 3 diamonds. And I saw that 2 of them looked kind of a little hint of yellow and the other one didn't. And I liked that one better. So I was like, oh, this one. Well, it turned out that like those other 2 diamonds were the best 2 diamonds he had ever had, like bought in that store. But that new diamond, he went to the jewelry show out in Vegas and bought that diamond. And so comparatively, it wasn't, you know what I mean? But it was actually like, so, and so anyway, so I got this amazing engagement ring. And so I had, you know, the beautiful engagement ring, the beautiful home, beautiful car, beautiful kids. And as soon as that happened, as soon as we got engaged, it was like night and day.
Everything changed.
Everything just went sideways. And when I say like we worked together, poker, lived together, we were never apart. So, and this is pre like social media really, right? So there wasn't like, I wasn't on Instagram or, you know, I wasn't up all night, you know, texted on Twitter or anything. We were together all the time. So there was no time for it. And I don't drink, I don't do drugs. Like I wasn't out partying. We were together 7 days a week, 24/7. And so as he became like more mentally abusive, and like I said, I didn't even notice my clothes kind of just like started, let's say, just like disappearing, you know? And I used to wear like V-neck t-shirts and whatever cute little shorts. And then those kind of went away. And then all of a sudden I was just like, had like t-shirts that were left. And then all of a sudden it was just like, kind of like guys t-shirts. And it was just like warm-up pants, like guys, like Nike warm-up pants. And then it was to the point where like, I wasn't really allowed to wear anything that was dressy in the States. Only when he and I would travel, like to go to Mexico and stuff like that. When he and I were on vacation together, could I look like what he thought was like being sexy? And I didn't even like, it happened so slowly, like that way. And, you know, I didn't even notice it because I thought like, oh, he loves me and I love him. We're together and this is amazing. So that was like in August of 2007. In May of 2008, it just stands out to me like so clearly. My mom had taken, my mom and I had gone shopping for my sister who was getting married in the fall to pick out like outfits for her like wedding night and stuff like that. And so my mom saw this little sundress and she's like, oh, this looks so cute on you. And she's like, oh, I'll buy it for you. And that's the other thing too, because my ex controlled all of our money. And so I was not allowed to touch any of it. I mean, even if I made it in poker, like, or because I worked with him, like I wasn't allowed to see any of it. I didn't know anything about it. He had the only key to the lockbox. And so he controlled all the money. When I would go to Walmart, and when I tell you he was wealthy, like he was well off enough, like I'm talking he had a few $1 million in the bank. I would go to Walmart and he would go through the receipt and itemize and check every single thing off that I bought. Because not only like about the money aspect, but he wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything weird and buying anything he didn't approve of. It was like that scary, that crazy. And so in May, my mom bought me this sundress. And when I tell you the sundress was like, you couldn't even see like cleavage. It was just like a V-neck, but a high V-neck and very long, almost to my knees. So my mom bought me that in like the end of April. And so Saturday, the first Saturday in May is the Derby, you know, the Kentucky Derby. And so my family always has like a big get together. And it had gotten to the point where I stopped playing poker. All of 2007, I actually never played poker because the only time I could get alone time was if he went to go play and I stayed at home. That's the only time I could get away from him. And so a lot of people don't know that about me, but I never played poker the entire year before I actually turned to go play full time. And so, in like this weekend, I told him like I wasn't feeling very well, but really I was just making up an excuse because I didn't want to have to go play poker with him because I could not get away from him. And so I told him, I was like, oh, I'm not feeling very well. Like you can go ahead and play. I'm just going to stay at home. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, great. So he goes to go play poker. Well, then I said, hey, like a few hours later, I said, hey, I'm going to go to my family's derby get together. And he's like, he flips out on me. He's like, you knew you were going there the whole time. And I said, no, I actually hadn't planned on going. But my mom said you should really go and whatever. And so he's like, you're planning on going there the whole time. I can't believe you're doing this. It's so deceitful. And I'm like, I just want to go to the family get together. I said, you can come meet me there. He's actually only 15 minutes from where he's playing poker. And I said, you can meet me there. He's like, I don't want to see people. I don't want to see your family. And I'm like, okay, that's really strange. I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Just out of this big ruckus for no reason. And so I said, and this is crazy because no man has ever asked me this in my entire life, except that they were just like curious so they could dress themselves. But he said, well, what are you going to wear? And I said, well, I'm going to wear that sundress that mom got me, you know, because obviously he'd seen it because I had to bring it home. And he flipped out on me. He screamed at me, you're not fucking wearing that. That's so revealing. It's so sexy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't want to say his name, but my ex,
yeah.
I said, but you do realize that like everyone at the party, I'm either related to, or they're the date of someone I'm related to. There's not single men hanging out at this party. Plus, I'm engaged to you.
It's obscene that you even have to explain.
I know, but isn't that like,
yeah.
And so that was honestly the final kind of straw that broke the camel's back. I knew then that there was an issue, like there was a real problem. I mean, I can understand if I had cheated on him at some point, or if I was out partying every night, he's coming home picking me up from the bar and I'm hanging all over dudes, but I was at home taking care of his kids, you know, like there was none of that. And so that's when I started realizing, okay, I need to kind of figure out my life. And my mom came to me, she said, Jessica, like, I don't even recognize you anymore. Like, and the other thing is like, when we would have get-togethers over at our house, we would have like birthday parties for the kids and stuff at our house. I couldn't even have a conversation with anyone without him having to be like an earshot of the conversation. It was really, it was very intense. And so, like I said, 2007, I didn't play poker at all. And when I finally left him and got up the courage to leave him, that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because here is my life that looks so amazing from the outside, you know, had everything I ever wanted. But all I really ever wanted out of my life was to be with someone who loved me and I loved them and they were good to me and treated me great. I don't care about money. That's never been anything to me, you know? And that was the hardest part, leaving him, because of the kids.
Yeah.
And my mom said to me, because they do have a mom still, right? She's not that maternal, but they actually have a mom. And my mom said to me, it's really hard for you to leave, but those kids have a mom. and you will grow to resent them because of how he's treating you. She said, it's just like human nature, and you can't give up your life, for that. And so I said, yeah, you're right. And yeah, so I finally one day rebuilt my independence. Like, you wouldn't think from all my background and everything that I could allow that to happen to me. But like I said, it's such a slow, just chip away to one day you just look at yourself in the mirror and you think, what happened? Where did I go?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that, because I know it's deeply personal. It's not easy to go revisit those things, and it just shows, doesn't it, that part of life that gets talked about a lot in the poker world, actually, is like the patriarchal kind of world that we live in, and how men are raised or become these monsters, and I've had elements not like that, but certainly when me and Liza have gone through therapy, and the therapist has said to me, do you get any value of like raising your voice and getting angry and shouting at your wife? And then it's like, oh shit, I do, because it fits into my ideal of what a man should be, that I'm like in charge, and everybody needs to conform to what I say. And I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? And then you realize that, holy shit, my dad's like that, and his dad was like that. And then you start to think to yourself, well, I cannot be this guy, because I don't want my daughter to think that this is acceptable when she has a dad. And right. you had two kids in this in this relationship that weren't yours, but similarly, if you would have grown up together, they would have, were they girls at all, or boys?
Two boys.
Boys. So they would have grown up thinking it's okay to treat women in the same way, right? I mean, yeah. How do you see that patriarchal world? Like, then when you move into poker, like you go to Vegas, you're on your own, you're in a very heavily male-dominated environment. People have split opinion on that in poker, in as much as like, a lot of people think that it's a terrible place and men are just pigs and treat women like shit. And there's other people like, well, we can handle our own out there. What is your view of being a single woman go to Vegas in the poker industry?
Well, I think the military definitely prepared me for that, because I was in a flying squadron, so it's very, very male dominant. And you talk about ego. I mean, when you're around pilots, and they have to have ego, right? Because you're going to have to fly a plane into a war zone while they're getting shot at, so it's understandably so. It's like the God complex with doctors, right? So I kind of was already abreast of that situation, and very well, like, I could take care of it, and handle it. I think it's kind of like the yin and yang. So for me in my life, I've attracted a lot of people in my dating life. I've been like kind of codependent, right? So I've attracted a lot of addicts because I grew up in a home with an addict. And so, a lot of times they say, like, you might become an addict or you become codependent. And I chose the codependent route. And so I think the way that it works, like in poker, is that instead, like, people see me, they see like, okay, no, she's a strong woman. She can handle herself. She's not going to take shit, And so I didn't get too much of that, in my career in poker. I get it, a few times, like, oh, women belong in the kitchen. Oh, what are you doing in a man's game? Oh, this is the good boy system, and all this bullshit. But then, like, most of them, I ended up becoming like friendly with at the table, because I can match whatever bullshit they're, bringing. They expect me to back down. And then I'm like, no, I step up to the plate. And so I think, and it's a sad thing to have to earn their respect. I don't give a shit about earning the respect, but in their eyes, I earned the respect because I stood up to the plate and didn't back down, But that's another reason why I'm happy to be soon kind of exiting as my full-time gig, because that energy that I have to constantly bring and the armor that I have to keep up, I don't want to have that on. I don't want to be that person. I don't enjoy being on that level and on that vibration. I like being nice and friendly, and I don't want to have to operate from that perspective. But at the same time, I'm not going to let someone try to walk all over me. And I'm also not going to let someone, the military for sure, and just how I was raised, if I see someone being picked on, if I see the underdog being taken advantage of, like, I will 100% of the time step in, even if it's not my place. I don't care. It's just innate in my nature. And so when I'm at the table and I see that happening, even if it's not me, even if it's not a woman, even if it's just, a different man who's like being attacked, like, I will 100% of the time step in no questions asked. Like, I will be there. And so I just don't want to have that for the rest of my life, you know? And so I didn't, like I said, I didn't really experience it too much over my lifetime in poker, mostly just like here and there, you know, women belong in the kitchen. This is that kind of archaic, usual, archaic bullshit way of thinking.
So we discussed one of your inciting incidents in your hero's journey, where you jump in your van and go for a 29-hour journey or whatever it is. But you talked a little bit about leaving poker. So I guess the questions I've got are, every hero eventually at the end of their journey gets this treasure, right? So I guess the question is, what does that treasure look like to you now? And what is your second inciting incident that happened within poker where we're going, oh, wow, she's going to leave poker and she's going to do this. I wonder if she makes it. Like, talk about those two little things for me, if you can.
Sure. So the one thing is, like I told you a long time ago, I thought I was going to be famous for something when I was a kid and everything like that. What I've learned now from like a little bit of fame I've gotten through poker is that I don't want that anymore. I'm not a huge fan of social media. I don't enjoy interacting with people that I don't know so much, you know, and also giving them information about my whereabouts and feeling like beholden to them. Because the reason I bring it up is because originally my next career choice was going to be something on TV. I do enjoy, like I told you, I love the social interaction. I love people. I love speaking to people. I'd always wanted to be a talk show host. And so I pitched the idea maybe 4 years ago now. I met with an agent in LA, and she liked me enough to bring me on. Because you know how it is in LA. Like, I didn't know this at all because I don't know TV or anything. You know, I don't know anyone who's like an actor besides like Jennifer Tilly, you know, but I never would have asked her. But I didn't know that, you know, agents, there's so many people who want to act, that agents have to hire you effectively, you know, right? They interview you and not the other way around. And so I was very fortunate to get with a really good agent in LA. But what I've realized is that through my interviews that I've done, and just most of the shows that they would have chosen me for are military things, right? So like the CIA files and stuff, whatever, hosting those shows. It's just not for me anymore, you know? Right. And it just kind of dawned on me not too long ago. I thought, like, well, let's see, I don't really enjoy the social media aspect of things anymore. I don't enjoy having to tell people where I am. You open yourself up to a lot of unsavory characters, the more, you know, popular and or famous you become, and the less anonymity that you have. And so I love traveling. And I love, more than anything, I love having that anonymity. If I want to go to Walmart at, 2 a.m. with my hair greasy, I put a ponytail and hadn't showered in a day, like, I want that life. And I don't want people to have to take pictures, take pictures of me or, And so I just realized that I don't want to do that anymore. And I'm very fortunate. I have met a few really good people in poker, and maybe we'll get to the really bad people in poker at some point, but no, I've met a lot of good people in poker, a few of them that have like stood out above the rest, and one that I do business with. And so he's a really good real estate, I call him like a real estate developer up in Canada. And so he's open to doing some business with me. And so I really think that my next calling is going to be doing real estate. And so not like selling, but actually, developing in that kind of realm. And my mom was a real estate agent for 9 years. I've always loved pretty much all things real estate, whether it's buying, selling, building. I love kind of all of it. And so that feels really good, really good to me. And also doesn't put me out there in the social realm as much. But that would be for like how I'm going to make money, right? That's going to be like my career, making money. But my calling in life, I don't feel has anything to do with real estate. I think it has more to do with like teaching children and helping them. My sister homeschools her kids, and I do like a class with them about like a travel. I have like a travel agency, and so I go through the whole realm, like all of it. I go through all of the aspects of travel with them. What I set up, like the hotel, we do the airplane, we do check in to the hotel, we do the whole thing. So it's a lot of math and stuff like that. And so those things give me, give me energy and really enjoyment out of life. So I think, definitely real estate to make money, but everything involving in kids give me to give me life.
It's always great when I hear a story where it comes full circle and your calling in life is to give back to other people in some way, and especially children. So it sounds like a really exciting project. And as someone who travels around a lot, me and Liza, we have a 3-year-old. We've thought about homeschooling a lot, and it's very challenging for parents to kind of figure out what best to do, for your kids.
Oh yeah, that's a stress that I don't envy, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, that's wonderful. Really, really happy you told us that. So thank you. What about, to get where you are today and to get where you want to get to, how do mentors fit into this? So who has really helped you get to where you are today? And who do you think you need to help you to, reach your true calling and to become a teacher and to really be a success in real estate? So there's 2 questions there, really, I guess.
Well, up until I got into poker full time, I would say my brother had the biggest impact on me as a mentor, getting me into college, because my parents really didn't know much about that kind of stuff, and kind of told me especially the military, do this and do that and everything. So it was my brother, and it's really kind of a sad thing because he and I were very close. Our personalities were very similar comparatively to my brother and sister. But then when I chose to go into poker, he did not respect that decision. And so he and I kind of went our separate ways, I guess about 13 years ago. So we still, are family, and we still see each other and whatever, but the closeness is definitely gone. Once I chose poker, he kind of said okay, well, that's not something I agree with. And that was it. He thought I was wasting my talents, and wasting my life effectively to do that. And he didn't understand it, which is fine. And so I would say he was my mentor for that portion of my life. After that, I would say I was my mentor for some time, because I was kind of solo, right? But then my mom, probably because she's had a lot, like I was mentioned earlier, a lot of adversity, and she's kind of gotten through it. She lost the child, she lost the husband, she dealt with abuse issues, and she's worked her way through all of those things. And she now, unfortunately, has a lot of medical problems. And so she doesn't get out much anymore, but she always she was always the biggest fan and the biggest instigator for me, just make sure you go live your dreams, do as much as you can, because nothing is guaranteed. And if it wasn't for her, I would have accomplished half of what I've accomplished now, And so that aspect, for sure, my mom. And then my dad, because he's one of the nicest people I've ever, nicest man I've ever met. Sometimes to a fault, because, kind of lets people walk on him a little bit, but I'd rather be more like that than other people I've met along the way. And he's just really just a good person. He always does the right thing. I've never known my dad to ever do anything wrong, ever, whether it be in business or just, in the family. He just always shows up, takes care of everyone, takes care of people he doesn't have to take care of, shouldn't take care of. He just is always there. So I would say my mom and my dad for sure. And then, but now moving on into business, I would definitely say, hopefully will be soon my business partner. Like I said, he's amazing at real estate, and he's built several, and it's not just real estate, he's built a lot of other companies. And so I'm going to pull as much information from him as, that I can, because I think he just has a wealth of knowledge and that he's willing to share. He loves poker, and that's how we originally met. And so poker has definitely given me a lot of things, other than, money and the lifestyle. It's given me a lot of good connections. And, and you know how it is in poker, because you have a lot of money, that's flying around all the time. And I could be in a cash game, or someone could be in a cash game, be like, hey, you have 20K, you have, 10K on you, no problem, this and that. And so your word and your reputation in poker, right? Those things you can't put a price on. And if, like I say, in 12 or in 13 years that I've been in poker, if your phone number hasn't changed, and you still have a good reputation, then that says a lot about your character. Yeah. And so I think it's been really easy for me to make good relationships and make good business relationships, because they know, okay, she's at least trustworthy. She might be shit and flea. They don't know that yet, right? But they have a good idea that I'm not, but they know that they can trust me when it comes to money. And that's kind of, you can't put a price on that, I don't think.
So when it comes to your mentors, these are people who we don't know it at a time, it just happens. But if you was to go back in hindsight, you'd be picking these people out to actually help you to get over certain obstacles. and to defeat certain villains in your life. So we've already touched upon a few of those obstacles and a few of those villains, but what other villains have shown up in your life? And villain doesn't have to be a person. It could be a belief system. It could be an institution. It could be anything, right? So what villains have shown up in your life, and what obstacles have you had to overcome that these mentors have helped you with?
Well, let's see. The villains have shown up in my life. Probably like kind of, this is kind of funny, but when I was stationed overseas, we would have to, part of Intel, you have to watch like all the different news stations, right? And you have to, because you don't know like it's on CNN or Fox News or Sky News or BBC. And so you're watching all of those. And it's funny because I always thought that the news meant that it had to be truthful. I don't know why. I just, when you watch the 6 o'clock news when you're growing up or whatever, and they're reporting and everything, you're like, oh, wow, like it's the news. If it's on the news, it's the truth. And then when I was overseas and I was actually there on the fucking ground, and I was back in my, and I'm in my office and I'm watching the news and I'm like, what are they talking about? And that's when I started to realize, oh shit, this is all for profit, right?
Mm.
This is money. This is like sex sells kind of thing. So they're the first ones to break a story, even if they don't have all the correct information. It's out there. So that was probably my first villain, was really being let down by what I thought was a really good institution, and then realizing that no, it's controlled by money.
Mm.
And so I know it's kind of like probably like a weird villain, but that was one of the biggest eye-opening experiences that I've had in my life, where I thought, because it wasn't just the news, it started to trickle down. Like, wait, if it's the news that's being able to be bought and handled a certain way, well, then it's probably politicians, and it's, and so that's kind of like, very eye-opening to me. And so when people try to get into conversations, they want my opinion. Or what's your opinion on the war? Or what's your opinion on, this politician? I said, I don't have one. I don't have one, because money controls so many things that it shouldn't. People should not be allowed to be bought. Companies shouldn't be allowed to be able to be bought. And for sure as fuck not the news, And so that was probably my biggest realization, my biggest letdown in life, was realizing that, man, money really does make the world go round, and it's a sad, sad existence,
That is actually the biggest, baddest villain we've had so far on a hero's journey, because there's actually a phenomenon, I can never say that right, called cultivation theory, where people watch too much TV and they think that that's life, that is real life. And my mum and dad, not my dad, not so much, but my mom, she definitely makes all the decisions based on cultivation theory. So if that knowledge that's coming through is designed to make her feel and think a certain way, it's a pretty devious bastard. I mean, that's like Darth Vader shit, right?
Yeah. That's And then the thing for me is that people think I'm uneducated because, well, you don't watch the news. You don't want to talk politics. I'm thinking to myself, it's not me. It's you all. I know the truth. I've seen it firsthand. You all haven't. But that's for you all to decide, and for you all. I'm not going to judge you either way. You want to talk politics all the time? You want to waste your energy on that? You want to talk about the news and what's going on? You go ahead. But all the stuff you see on TV, none of it's not really, hardly any of it's real. Maybe 10% of it's real. And you're wasting all your time and energy on something that isn't true. You didn't see it with your own eyes. You didn't live through it. And so it's just kind of the irony. Someone said like, oh, you're like an ostrich with your head in the sand. I said, that's not me you're talking about. One of us is that ostrich, but it's not me.
Go on, sorry.
And I've been very fortunate. Like, poker has given me a lot. And like I said, I've met a few like amazing people in poker, but it just doesn't fit me anymore, And I don't want to accidentally bleed too far over into the dark side. I want to stay in the light. And I want to, for sure. And so I think people ask me a lot of times, the question is like, what would you recommend for up and coming poker players or people who want to break into poker? And I would tell them, and I tell every single person, is make sure that you have a really good solid foundation. If you already had a career and you're retired, that's an amazing way to play poker, right? Because you already have a source of income. You don't have to worry about paying your bills and everything like that. But man, poker today is very stressful and it's very hard to break into. And now the competition is just insane. Luckily, there are training sites, like you have here and stuff like that. And there's a lot more books that you can read, and you have coaches and all that didn't exist when I was coming up. But you also have way better players now, and it's much harder to break into because you have all those other things, ways to study the game. But yeah, I would just tell them to really think twice about doing it as a full-time profession. I would say, finish your college degree if you're in school, or keep your job, like your solid foundation of whatever your job is, and then just play casually, like on the weekends and everything like that. Because I'm sure this, and people heard it, I've heard it a lot throughout poker. Like, poker is a very, very, very tough way to make it, to have an easy living. They say, it's a very hard way to have an easy living, and it really is true. Like, nothing is guaranteed in poker. Some of the best, some of the great, some people that no one watches this podcast will ever, or this interview will ever even know about, because they went broke long before they should have, because it's just poker. The variance is really high, and so.
But I bet you have no regrets jumping in that car, making that 29-hour journey to Vegas.
No, I don't. No, especially now. Like I said, I'm sitting in Costa Rica, and I think you asked earlier one of the questions, like when you typed them out or whatever. If I say, would you say, like, I could see myself now?
If a young 16-year-old Jessica Dawley could see herself now, what would she say?
She'd say, I made it. Yeah. I did it. It was always my dream to travel and to travel the world and meet a lot of people. And I really am. Honestly, this interview has made me think about a lot of things, and I really am proud of myself. I've definitely, I'm human. I've made mistakes. I've definitely made, I've made bad decisions, just like we all do along the way. But overall, like, I'm really proud that I did it, and now I'm ready for the next thing.
It's like that feeling you had when you were younger that you were always going to be famous. To me, it sounds almost like more of a drive to find freedom in the world, and you kind of, through all these different obstacles in life, you're getting a better shape of what that freedom looks like, and the future must look really exciting for you. So
it does. It is. I'm really excited. I'm actually not nervous in the slightest. I'm really excited to just kind of move on and do something different. Like, you're still going to see me. I'm not like one of these people that says, like, oh, I'm retiring from poker.
Yeah.
First of all, to say that I retired from poker means I made enough money to live off of, which I haven't. That's just the honest truth, I travel all the time. I spend a lot of money. So I wouldn't say I'm retiring from poker. You're still going to see me here and there, play a little bit, but no more full-time, no more full schedules, and no more giving up family or quality time for poker.
Well, Jessica, it's been really great having you as our hero this week. I've really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best. And maybe I'll be hiring you in the future to look after my little baby Zia. Huh?
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's way more my path now. But you're welcome, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate that you reached out, and that I could be even considered a hero. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica.